Hello. Welcome back to Shower Thoughts with Mansi, where I update you guys on what's been lingering on my mind over the past few days, or week, or year, or lifetime, who knows. And we talk about it, we try to unpack it, and we try to learn as much as possible from it. So, welcome back. I need to start and preface this with a disclaimer. I feel like I am going to get a bit of slack right now because the thoughts that I recently had were not shower thoughts. They were brushing my teeth thoughts. And I'm also not sleep deprived today, which is not on brand if you have listened to the 2 previous episodes. But anyway, we'll get into it. So basically today, I was brushing my teeth and I was looking at my skin because I was about to say, as you guys know, but you guys don't know because I don't think you've been in my bathroom, except if you're Edward. Hi, Edward. And basically my bathroom has like full-length mirrors. It's a bit weird, but you get used to it. So you can see yourself doing everything, like showering, brushing your teeth, and all of that stuff. I was brushing my teeth, and I was just like staring at myself, and I was looking at my skin. And one of the things on my vision board for 2024 was cleaner skin, and I'm going to unpack that in a second. Because I don't know, I feel like I've mentioned this in the previous episodes, but I had a bit of a health crisis. Now, with hindsight, it wasn't really a health crisis. It was just my body lacking probiotics. But basically, my kidneys, or like my bladder, that region wouldn't stop bleeding, and I was like, what is going on? So it felt like a health crisis in the moment. And during that time, because I couldn't spin, I couldn't run, and a lot of the things that I actually love doing and that make me feel like myself, I couldn't do. I started to feel really bad about myself. I started to view myself as like, I don't know, I didn't like the way I would see myself anymore, because I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel like my body was a weapon, which is like so mean of myself to think about myself, but completely, you know what, it was how I felt, and how I feel is always going to be valid based on what I am going through and what I am thinking. And basically, as I was going through that last December, I was like, you know what, I want to, this year specifically, I want to work on 2 things I was really insecure about when I was growing up, which was my skin and my hair, because my mum had like porcelain skin and the most beautiful hair. She would literally wake up and look like a goddess. I was like, yeah, this is something I want to work on. I feel like I'm in a good place with it, but I really, really, really want to work on it. And I actually had time. I only started to have time to work on it and like actively research and, you know, do all of that stuff after my breakup, because my breakup liberated so much space and time in my life, and it was so nice to have something to focus on. So I spent a lot of time like reading about, you know, like my skin and listening to Andrew Huberman podcasts, but just like researching as much as I can find. And it's kind of funny how little things have made the absolute difference. I wish I could show like a before and after of my skin, but literally changing my pillows every 2 days, biggest difference in my life. This was the reason for like acne on my cheek. The second I changed, like I started changing my pillows every 2 or 3 days, no acne on my cheek, none, zilch. Started using retinol, and oh my god, like literally, god, what? Hello. It started smoothing my skin, and I was like, okay. And then I did more research, and now I have a whole like face routine that I live and die by, basically, which is no one else, but I'm gonna give it anyway. Morning is wash, tone, vitamin C, sunscreen. And if it is cold, I'll put like a layer of moisturizer before the sunscreen. Thank you, goodbye. Touch in sunscreen during the day if it's super sunny. Also, don't forget to put sunscreen on your ears and your neck. And then in the evening, it's wash, tone, retinol, moisturize. Thank you, goodbye. But yeah, I can also list the products if anyone is interested, but they are really cheap. I wouldn't say they are really cheap, but they are really affordable. And I think like I spend like £50 every like 2-3 months to like restock everything I have. But anyway, life changing. Also, drinking water changes your skin, literally. Toner makes the biggest difference, because I recently found out how for your face to look plump, it needs to be hydrated. So don't forget your toner, guys. So yeah, basically just sitting there. That was like a 5-second thought that I extrapolated into how many minutes? 5 minutes. Yes, thank you. And I just sat there and I was like, oh my god, like all those little changes made such a big difference. And okay, there's still things I want to work on in terms of like my skin, but like I made so much progress. I made so much progress by changing little things as I went. And I started to think about my life. Yes. And I promise at one point I will stop talking about my breakup, but right now it is so relevant. Going through that breakup was a very interesting experience, because the way I reacted to it was very like surprising even to me. And I was like, okay, I feel like the way I am reacting is not proportional and doesn't match the situation, so maybe therapy might help. And on this podcast we are pro therapy. It is like going to the gym. It ensures that, or actually that's a lie, it's like going to the doctor and doing your routine check. It's so good for you. And like having a therapy like so like sessions and stuff is literally like going to the gym. It's making sure, actually I want to rephrase that. Going to therapy is just as important as doing strength training when you're running a marathon. Like it literally makes you more resilient. You build more empathy towards yourself. There's so many things. We could spend like 2-3 hours talking about all the benefits of therapy. But yeah, very pro therapy there. Found myself the most incredible therapist. Love you. I'm going to give her initials Theo. I love you. You're a queen. And one of the first things we did was an exercise called core principles. No, it's not core principles, core beliefs. We did this exercise called the core beliefs, where also you're welcome to do this at home. The first step of the exercise is talking about all the experiences in your life that you think has shaped you. And then once that's done, you're happy, you go on to doing the second part of the exercise, is how you would describe yourself. For example, that would be, I am strong, I am independent, I am resilient, I am, but also with all the positive adjectives or the negative adjectives. So being honest about, I am mean to myself, I think I am not good enough, things along those lines. And then once you're done with that second part of the exercise, the third and final part is like trying to see how a lot of the way you see yourself is connected to everything you've experienced. And that experience kind of, it felt like getting whiplashed, like someone like just threw ice cold water onto me to wake me up, because I knew both things. I knew part 1 and I knew part 2, but I didn't do part 3 like consciously. So there's so many things I didn't relate back. And I was like, oh my god, like, oh my god. And yeah, anyway, it was very interesting to just like experience that. But after we finished that exercise, I also went home and I was like, you know what? Now with the knowledge I have about myself, I want to sit down and do some extra homework and see how do I feel more fulfilled, because at that point I felt a little bit not fulfilled. Okay, good word. I'm happy with that. And I researched online. I'm a data scientist. It's unsurprising at all that I would be doing research about things. So now that's generally accepted, I started researching about it, and I found that video by Ali Abdal, who talks about the Wheel of Life, which breaks your life out in 3 sections. So is it health, work, and then relationships, and then it breaks these like 3 segments into like 3s again, and then you give a score so that you know like which part of your life needs more work right now, and then just that's the way you check in with how you're doing with yourself. And I loved that exercise, but at the same time I realized it did not align with me, so I kind of adapted it and I broke it down into I'm just going to break it down here. If you're interested, just draw it as well. I broke it down into 3 sections, so 3 major pillars of my life, which are health, purpose, and relationship. And now these 3 pies, I break them down into what do I define as health. So to me, that's physical health, mental health, spiritual health, and financial health, because these are the 4 things that like make me feel good within, if that makes any sense. And we'll unpack those in a second as well. But when going to purpose, I broke it down into 3, which for me was work, which consumes a massive part of my life. Daily learnings, because to me, feeling mentally stimulated every day is what makes me feel fulfilled. I love learning stuff, which is why I do that much research in the first place. Unsurprising here, is it not? So work, daily learnings, and then short-term goals, so things I'd want to do, for example, climb Kili, maybe run a marathon, actually anything that I think would be so cool to experience. I put it in the bucket and then I start working on it, and if in the moment I realize, okay, not for me, like for example London Marathon was in that bucket, and then after I read my health I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to run a marathon. The only reason I would be running a marathon would be because, you know, that's like the next step. But if I don't enjoy it, why am I doing it? Is it just to be in the 1% in the world? Yeah, but like, who cares? Who actually cares? I would be doing that for my ego rather than for myself. So anything I think would be so cool to try is something I add to that bucket, but it's interchangeable. If I feel like it doesn't align with me anymore, I just take it out. So that's the second pie. The third pie is relationships, which is broken down into my relationship with myself, which is the most important, my family, and then my friends. And I think if you're in a relationship, there's a 4th segment, which is like your partner. But at no point in time should that be a substitute to like yourself. I think having a good relationship with yourself in the first place is so important, and it helps you show up better as a family member and as a friend and as a partner. And then I further broke these down into, for example, physical health. To me, what does being in a good physical health means? That's being rested enough, being fueled enough, and moving, basically. And then mental health, like, what does that mean? And the more I sat down and I researched about it and I thought about what it meant for me, to me, that's like tracking, managing, and then resetting. And it's the same for financial health. It's the same with spiritual health. So basically, I just like created this massive weave of like 3 pillars of my life, breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down until I was really happy with it. And then I took it one step further and I'm like, okay, I know I get value and I get fulfillment from everything in that massive pillar list that I've created. How do I ensure I get fulfillment in my life every single day? And what I eventually ended up doing was I got a Google Calendar out, and I was like, okay, to me 8 hours of sleep is so important. Block that in my calendar. Eating well is so important, and I occasionally used to skip meals. For example, I wouldn't have breakfast. The most important meal of the day. Hello, girly. So added slot at like what time do I want to be eating specific meals. And I also recently started to like optimize the way I fuel myself, but that's probably a different episode. And then like put in a workout into like every day. And also when I mean a workout, it doesn't mean that I'm going to the gym every day. It's walking to work, cycling to work, doing spinning, of course. Like, who would I be if I wasn't spinning 2 to 3 times a week, and things along those lines. But making sure like I'm actually moving my body. So scheduling all of that, scheduling a time to call my family. Also, context, when I journal in the morning, I also have like I set myself 3 goals. So doing something for my health, doing something for my relationship, and doing something for my purpose. And in terms of relationship, I try to connect with one person a day. It could be a friend, it could be a family member. Ideally it would be more, but at least committing to like actually connecting with someone every day, I think, is so important. So also in my calendar, and purpose, well, it's usually work during the week, and then during the weekend I focus on like just like things I want to achieve, so short-term goals. And then every night before going to sleep, I usually read a book that helps with my learning of the day, or I would listen to a podcast. It's usually Andrew Huberman. If you're listening, I love you. Your content is so good. But yeah, so I was thinking about this while still brushing my teeth. Don't get me wrong. And I was thinking more about how do I refine this in such a way that it becomes automatic to me. And at the same time, I feel like I need to break it down into, instead of being like, okay, this is the time of the day I need to call someone. And I've written in my calendar, I need to call grandma at 9 a.m. and that is it. If I miss that slot, then I can do it. Or things along those lines. Bit lunatic. And I'll get into that in also a second. But all of this kind of happened because yesterday I didn't sleep well at all. I had an alarm at 4 a.m. I don't even know why I was waking up at 4 a.m. And then I was just so grumpy. And I started the day and I was like... and I wanted to go on a run, and there's a few things I also wanted to do, but my mental like ability to do so was just not there. And I knew that if I pushed myself, it was not going to be a good idea. And that kind of like created this like déclic, that's the French word, this like, how do I articulate it? It's really, really déclic, which means like things kind of clicked into place basically in my head. And I was like, I can only show up everywhere else if like my own basic needs are met, kind of that kind of logic. And I was like, okay, to me the first thing that is so important is being rested enough. If I'm not rested, I could have 500 goals for the day, I'll not be able to do it. And if I am rested, I could have 500 goals and I could achieve 1,000, is how I was looking at it. And I think also when I do my weekly review, I kind of grade everything individually, where I'm like, okay, I felt like this much rested and I fueled this much, but like very individual of each other, forgetting how they are all kind of interconnected. If I didn't sleep well, I'm not going to be running a marathon, like, let's be honest. And that kind of pushed me to start thinking about how I can be kinder to myself. And one thought that I've recently had was how instead of like being so specific at this time I'm doing this and at this time I'm doing that and at this time I'm doing that, just like looking at the how many hours do I sleep a day? About 8 to 9. How many hours are there in the day? 24 minus 8, that is 24 retiré 4, 20. 20 retiré 4, 6. So that's 16 hours, where I work 7.5 hours. Let's just round that up to 8, with like 8 hours for everything else. And I was trying to kind of like gauge how I would spread this out, because also additional context, I've been like super social recently and I have like a lot of plans. I'm getting brunch with my friend today, and I'm going to an engagement party, and I'm getting lunch with my friend tomorrow. And there's like so much in the diary, and I'm like, oh, I'm not that used to being that social. I'm an introvert, guys. I need some me time. So I was just like actually thinking about how to manage all of that, because I really want to see my friends, and I'm so happy for Ben, who just got engaged, and I actually really want to celebrate with them. But at the same time, how do I prioritize my own needs? So literally just trying to expand. I promise I was not brushing my teeth for an hour, but these are like thoughts that were super sped up that I'm trying to like articulate in this podcast. I'm like, okay, what is the best way to plan my days, my weeks, my life around things that matter to me? because also I've been doing a lot of things that don't really matter to me. I've been spending a lot of time on social media, which I shouldn't be doing. Not that I shouldn't be doing, but I wish I did less. I've spent a lot of time just doing the most irrelevant stuff in an attempt to self-soothe myself. And I'm like, self-soothing myself from what? Like, actually, what am I self-soothing from? Um, but yeah, it's been quite interesting, and I think this is the first episode where I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I haven't quite extracted what lesson I am taking from this yet, because I don't have like a conclusion as to how do I proceed forward. But I think it's made me sit here and appreciate quite a few things, which I would like to end the episode on. Number one, how setting your intentions is literally like 50% of the work. I feel like when I was doing my vision board, also context, I had two, because I did one and I was like, oh, it's not aesthetic, so I'm gonna do another one. Haha, lols. And I focused on the second, more aesthetic one. But I was looking at the previous one, and so many things out of it has happened and is happening, and I'm like, I didn't even look at the vision board at all in the past 6 months. But it's kind of so interesting to see how, like, just setting something on paper, drawing it out, writing it out, even though you're not looking at it, is like 50% of the work. So that is part one, and that makes me think about my skin and so many of the goals that I've achieved this year. I've met Akin Akman, I became really close to Alana. Alvin is literally like my best friend. Alvin, I love you if you're listening. I'm posting on Spotify. I thought it'd be different. I low-key was like, oh my god, working for Spotify would be so cool. But now I am making stuff for Spotify as you're listening. And I'm going on a trip in a few weeks, which has been something I've been looking forward to for like over 20 years now. But we'll talk about that after it happens. So yeah, literally so many things on that vision board have happened. So literally, point one, if there's something you want and you think it's so unrealistic, just put it on paper. You never know. Number two, how somehow the worst experiences of your life help you in the like best of ways. I think after that breakup, I really was like at the rockest of my bottom, or at the bottomest of my rock. But being in that place was so transformative, because it made me question so many things about my life. It made me question everything, which I think is a really good thing. It made me question what I valued, what I don't value, things that I am doing that actually make sense and align with me, things that I am doing that don't align with me. And like actually sitting down and going through like the pillars of my life was such groundbreaking work for me. And I'm so grateful that I did this work at 24 instead of at 50 and 60. Not saying that if you're doing that work at 50 at 60 is bad, but at least like the knowledge I have now compounds for the next few years. And even though I was so angry that I didn't do this before, I know it's gonna serve me for the rest of my life. Because at the same time, looking at those pillars and planning my life around a Google Calendar kind of closed so many tabs in my head. I cannot explain how and why, but it just like it made me feel free and released, and it felt like so many things that were in my head that I didn't even bother to articulate. Just the second it was on paper and organized, it liberated so much space in my head. So intentions, breakup. What is the final lesson that I can end this episode on? Just trust the process. I feel like I'm going to sound like such a hypocrite saying this, but trust the process. I genuinely feel so hypocritical saying this, because I am so impatient. I haven't trusted the process through the past 6 months. I literally have gotten like tarot card reads, and I'm like, please tell me, give me a sign. I've harassed my grandparents to like go see our family priest and be like, Who knew what's gonna happen? I feel like my planets are not in the right place. But if you've listened to the past episode and how I was talking about how when you zoom out, you actually see how everything falls into place. And the more you zoom out and the more you zoom out, you kind of realize, like, I don't want to say it's like butterfly effect, because I think it takes away a sense of agency, and it leaves it all to coincidence, which I am 50-50 on. But if you zoom out enough and you look far enough behind, you actually see why everything happens the way it does, and how some of the worst things you've experienced. This is not one of the worst things I experienced, but it was really hard to deal with in the moment. For example, not getting my job that I'm currently working at the year I wanted it. I got it a year later, and I felt like a failure for an awful amount of time. But when I look back, like, and I've said that in the previous episode, if it happened when I wanted it to happen, so many things would not have happened. So, honestly, just trust the process. And maybe keep me accountable about trusting the process, because this is something I'm, like, really working really hard on. And yeah, that's basically it for today. Thank you so much for having me in your ears, not on your ears, in your ears. Thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have any thoughts, please leave them down below, or you can send me a DM on Instagram. And don't forget to follow the podcast and give it a 5-star, or all of that stuff, still figuring it out. And yeah, that's basically it. Bye, guys.